I'm Joe Bianca.
I'm Bill Finley.
I'm Jonathan Green.
I'm Brian DiDonato.
Good morning. It is 9:35, Wednesday, October 14th. This is the TDN Writers Room presented by Keeneland. My name is Joe Bianca. I'm the associate editor of the Thoroughbred Daily News. And we may have lost one ARC winner this past weekend, but we saw a grade one win from another one.
Hi, I'm Bill Finley, a correspondent for the Thoroughbred Daily News. I'm proud to say we're about 58 episodes into the podcast. Never once has a fly landed on my head and sat there for 2 minutes while we're doing the podcast.
Jonathan Green, general manager from DJ Stable. And guys, we got to make this show short because my agent has double booked me for today.
Brian DiDonato, racing editor at TDN and managing partner of Franklin Ave Equine. And I'm not going to mention a certain horse that won on Saturday.
That's
you know who I'm talking about.
It's your ARC winner, baby. The TDN Writers Room is brought to you by Keeneland. A reminder that the Keeneland November breeding stock sale begins November 9th and runs through November 18th. There will be 3,777 offerings in the catalog, which was released last week. Keeneland Fall Meet is well underway. Lots of great action there. Always remember to wager with Keeneland Select and get all those bonuses. And we're looking forward to the Breeders' Cup, November 6th and 7th. It'll be here before you know it at Keeneland. So we didn't have the cornucopia of racing that we had last week when we had 17 graded stakes on Saturday. I think there were 20-something total, but there was some good action this past weekend. It was the last call for Breeders' Cup preps. You have the EP Taylor and the Woodbine International this weekend, but overall, it's pretty much done as far as Breeders' Cup preps go. We had a 3-year-old win the Jockey Club Gold Cup for the second straight year in Happy Saver. Not the most scintillating Jockey Club Gold Cup field. I worry about that race getting downgraded in the near future because it just the field quality seems to go down every year. Unfortunately, they were obviously in a tough spot this year too with the Preakness. Might have gotten a couple other 3-year-olds to run, but Happy Saver completed the famous Federico Tessio Jockey Club Gold Cup double in the against older horses, against 4 older horses. Tacitus was an even money favorite in there, was pretty disappointing. Happy Saver rode the rail. And it looked like he was struggling a little bit on the far turn, but once he got clearance in the stretch, he fought on well and won that. He was really getting wailed on there, I thought, by Gerardo Ortiz Jr. in the stretch. It's a little uncomfortable the way he hits horses sometimes. But that aside, the 2-year-olds took center stage as well. Jackie's Warrior, still super impressive, has done everything right so far. We're going to talk to his owner, Kirk Robison, a little bit later. Got a 100 buyer in winning the Champagne, was eased up at the end, probably could have run a little bit faster. I said it on Twitter, I didn't understand the ride on reinvestment risk in that race, because once you let Jackie's Warrior get loose on the lead and the hopeful, and then are just never able to even come close to reeling him in, I thought you need to be a little bit more aggressive in the Champagne, but instead you let him go 23-2, 46-4, and that's like walking for a horse of Jackie's Warrior's quality. Dayoutoftheoffice won the Frisette for Tim Ham. That was a pretty impressive effort. Another impressive in a Mischief daughter, got a 92 buyer. She looks to be near the top of the class of the 3-year-old or the 2-year-old filly division. So she's pretty exciting. Tamahere for Chad Brown, an import, won the Sands Point. Another good horse for Wooten Bassett, who's really come on as a sire overseas, and also some here in the U.S. Those were the main 3 performances. Civil Union won the Flower Bowl. I thought that was kind of a meh race. We had Harvey's little Goil, which I know Brian is dying to talk about, the future multiple ARC winner, and also the first grade 1 winner for American Pharaoh. He's had a lot of really nice horses, mostly on the grass, but had not had a grade 1 winner yet, so she got it done for him. And I thought she really deserved that too after the way she ran in the Dueling Grounds Oaks at Kentucky Down. She was up on a pretty fast pace, opened up in the stretch, and then just got run down late by Micheline, who also was second in the QE2. And then the other horse I wanted to mention is Nashville. It wasn't a grade stakes race. It was only an allowance, but this is a horse for Windstar that debuted late. I believe closing day or closing weekend maybe at Saratoga, and just crushed his competition in the slop. Won by, I think, 10, 12, 14 lengths, something like that. Got a 91 buyer, ran 21.43, and then did basically the same thing on Saturday at Keeneland. Ran 21 and 44, got a 101 buyer, one eased up by 9 3/4 lengths. Super, super exciting animal by Speightstown. Might go to the Breeders' Cup Sprint. Alan Carrasso did a little update on him earlier this week. So that does it for me for what I saw this weekend, but I'm curious to get your guys' reactions.
Yeah, Joe, thanks. And so much to talk about. Let me just stick first to the Jockey Club Gold Cup. And I share your worry. Can this race stay at grade 1 when we had a race like we had this year? Vino Rosso winning last year probably helped it maybe cushion it for a little while after running in the race and getting DQ'd and then winning the Breeders' Cup Classic. It would be a crying shame if the Jockey Club Gold Cup got downgraded. It's such a great race in the history of racing. But, the committee has a job to do, and I think they're going to look at this. Happy Saber's an interesting horse. I guess at this point, Todd Pletcher is not committed whether he's going to go to the Breeders' Cup or not. I don't see why he wouldn't off of a Jockey Club Gold Cup win. Granted, he'd be 15-1 or so in the Breeders' Cup Classic. But, we know it was not a very strong field. But nonetheless, for a 3-year-old in his 4th lifetime start, coming off the Federico Tessio, which is not exactly the Dubai World Cup, as we know, to win this race was pretty impressive. So we'll see more. And, poor Tacitus, he's become the horse that everybody likes to dump on now. And this was, if you count the Saudi Cup, the 7th grade 1 race that he's run in that he has not been able to win. I don't know how the horse doesn't know what grades the race are, but if you put a 2 and 3 up, he runs like a monster. And a grade 1, he just doesn't get it done. And not only that, he didn't get it done on a day where he went to the lead and went 24-4, 49-3, 113-3. Bill Mott, ironically, had a very good weekend with the future horse of the year, Harvey's Little Goil, winning the QE2. Frank Droquette as well is hot for him right now. But I'm sure he's tearing his hair out over what happened with Tacitus and Jockey Club Gold Cup. And not to touch on all the races, but one other I'd like to mention, this Nashville horse is fascinating, absolutely fascinating. I mean, he is so fast and so good, and we're seeing this time and time again from Steve Asmussen with these dirt sprinters. But can a horse really go from a non-winners of one allowance race and into the Breeders' Cup Sprint and win, no matter how fast he is? That would seem like a tall order, but I'd love to see him try it. I mean, the horse is obviously very good.
No, Bill, I agree 1,000%. In all the important races that occurred over the past 2 weeks, the one that really caught my eye was Nashville. And it was by a horse that's run, the least amount of races, but, has all the style and quality points you can want. And the thing that I like also is I've always been a Speightstown fan. We've bred to him for a number of years. And Mizzen Mast, is going to be a great broodmare sire. So it's some really old genes that are getting this job done, with Speightstown being kind of the old guard, and Mizzen Mast, has proven time and time again that he can produce good, solid horses. But wow, I mean, that horse was just outstanding in both his races. And I, for one, would love to see him vault to the top of the stage, in the Breeders' Cup Sprint. A couple other races that really caught my eye also had to do with a couple of the baby races. There were a pair of grade 3s that were going on at Belmont, on the turf. And the girls actually outran the boys as far as speed figures go, as far as time goes. Wesley Ward won the matron with royal approval, and they went faster than the boys did in their respective race in the futurity. But let's spin back to another 2-year-old that you've already mentioned, Jackie's Warrior. And again, we're going to have hopefully a great interview with the owner of that horse later on today. The horse ran 100 buyer. Now, that in itself is a very impressive feat for a 2-year-old. What makes it stand out even more is when Storm LaCourt won the Breeders' Cup Juvenile last year, he ran an 87 buyer to win that race. This horse has already eclipsed triple digits already early on in his career. And it's no surprise that he is going to go into the juvenile race as the favorite. But I'm excited about seeing him run. And, as royally as Nashville's bred in Speightstown out of a Mizzen Mast mare, you can make the case that this horse came out of nowhere, this horse being Jackie's Warrior. Maclean's Music, who, has had on and off again success. But the broodmare sire, and Brian helped me with this one, AP 500, that's a new one for me.
Yeah, I think he was he's in South America now. I remember when I did the pedigree note on it, I think he's had like 2 stakes horses as a broodmare sire. And that dam was claimed out of her last start by Carlo Vaccarezza and a partner. I thought Day Out of the Office. I feel like she's not getting the hype for for a 3-for-3 into mischief filly who just won a grade 1 the way she did, it doesn't seem like she's getting the hype that she should. It'll be interesting to see her odds compared to Princess Noor and McPeek's filly in the Breeders' Cup, because she's run I think she's run way the fastest race of the three. And I mean, maybe she's the third choice. Princess Noor has a pretty low figure top right now, but she's obviously the hype horse. It'll be interesting to see the betting in that race. But I just think that horse is super interesting. She galloped out huge. Distance doesn't seem like it should be an issue, 2 turns. But she was kind of the one that really caught my eye.
Let's hear it. Let's hear the Harvey's little Goil spiel.
I mean, what's there to say? I mean, game as could be, it's funny because now I have to be the Harvey little Goil.
We gotta get you a hat.
Later. I mean, Bill was right. She didn't win the Oaks. I mean, what can I say? She's a turf horse. Bill was right not having her on. Now that she won a grade 1, I can say Bill was right.
Well, I mean, Brian. Wait a minute. You're patting me on. Not deserve, Brian. You deserve credit for picking that horse out. And what makes the story even more interesting is now I would think that they're done with the dirt with this filly now that she's a grade 1 winner on the turf. And that whole story of how she emerged on the turf for American Pharoah, his first ever grade 1 winner. And who would have thought in the beginning of all this that people would look at American Pharoah as a grass sire? Which, I mean, his horses on the dirt are fine, but you would think that right now they're a little bit better on the grass, which is very interesting. So we all love Harvey. How can you not love a horse, first of all, just named Harvey? I mean, that in and of itself is enough. And congratulations on her win.
The best was listening to the track announcer without a New York accent say Harvey's little Goil. It's so stuck in his throat and mouth to say it. He had to say it with such emphasis because otherwise it wouldn't come out right.
It's supposed to be Harvey's little Goil. Back to Jackie's Warrior for a second. He's a little bit interesting because of that modest breeding. I don't know. He's going to have to go 2 turns in the juvenile, and I know he's been left alone on the lead in these last couple of races. Now, part of that is because he's so fast. He runs these other horses off their feet. I think that was the case in the Saratoga Special, and they're rather in the Hopeful. I don't know, he could definitely rate a little bit, but in the Champagne, as impressive as he was, I thought it wasn't necessarily a good test for the juvenile just because of the way the race was run. So I think that'll be interesting if he does get more pace pressure in the juvenile. I agree with Brian about Day Out of the Office. She really, I don't know, I guess maybe it's the connections, their lower profile connections. I think that were like a Chad Brown and Juddmonte horse or whatever. I think she would be probably close to co-favorite with Princess Noor, but she's probably going to end up being like 4-1 or so in the juvenile fillies. So yeah, I think she's not getting her due thus far, but she's gonna have a chance to prove herself in the Breeders' Cup. Anything else that you guys wanted to mention, John? I feel like you were in the middle of something.
No, that was it.
Okay.
I think we covered all the important races. It was another fun weekend. It wasn't like 2 weekends ago, but it was certainly a great weekend of racing. And we're going to hit a little bit of a lull heading into the next couple of weeks before we hit a crescendo of races, for the Breeders' Cup weekend.
At Keeneland. But also just in addition this weekend to the EP Taylor, and it's the Northern Dancer Turf now. I call it the Woodbine International. We also have the British Champions Day overseas at Ascot. We have the British Champion Fillies and Mare Stakes, the Long Distance Cup, the British Champion Sprint, and then the Kipco Champion Stakes, which is the big one going 10 furlongs, grade 1. And then we have the rescheduled Hill Prince as well. The Hill Prince was supposed to be run on Monday, but they canceled it because of the rain. They're going to run it this Saturday Sunday at Belmont. And then we have the Shuka Show over in Japan for 3-year-old fillies, $2 million race. So still some stuff to look forward to this weekend. But overall, I think we're all ready to turn the page and start looking to the Breeders' Cup. And we're going to be looking forward to when those pre-entries come out and we can start discussing these fields at length. We'll be right back after this message from Keeneland. Owning multiple graded stakes winning racehorses like Hard Not to Love and Decorated Invader is attainable with a partnership like West Point Thoroughbreds. Partnerships enable you to spread your ownership across several horses for less than it costs to own one horse alone. This increases your racetrack action and chances for a big horse. Learn more about why West Point Thoroughbreds is the gold standard in racing partnerships at westpointtb.com. So the big news of the week, I would say, is Enable retiring. Kind of saw this coming as a possibility after she did not run that well in the ARC. You can say what you want about the heavy ground being an excuse, but overall she's usually better than that. Even when the ground isn't ideal, she usually runs second or third at least. This was a case where you completely understand the retirement. We've had some retirements recently in the last month or two that it's just like horses barely get a chance to run and then they're whisked off to the shed. But in this case, she really did all she could have possibly been asked to do. She ran through from 3 to 6. She won multiple ARCs. She was second last year in the ARC. Even though she didn't run her top race in her last race, she has just been a remarkable filly and mare for 4 full seasons. Hats off to John Gosden and everybody who is taking care of her along the way, because she's been a total joy to watch. She's taken on the boys. She's really she's gone toe to toe with the best of her generation, male or female, and she's come out on top more often than not. And she's the mark she has the mark of a great racehorse in that everybody has something nice to say about her. I don't know any Enable haters. I think she's done everything she could possibly do. Coming over, I think, winning the ARC and then coming over and winning the Breeders' Cup Turf a couple of years ago, I think that's one of the greatest doubles that you can do in racing. And to do it as a filly, it was just an absolutely remarkable feat. And she did it over a really boggy turf course at Churchill that day. It was a really wet course. So she definitely has proven herself over multiple distances, multiple turf conditions, multiple continents. She's as good as it gets, and it's going to be a shame not to see her anymore. But she is a 6-year-old, so it's completely understandable. And hopefully, we had Love this year really break out as a 3-year-old filly. She maybe she's the heiress to the throne. We'll see. She's probably not going to run again this year until 2021 after scratching out of the ARC. But hats off to everybody who campaigned and took care and enabled this whole time. She has been an absolute pleasure to watch. Wonder if you guys have any other thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, first, one side note, it was they said that Love is not going to run in the Breeders' Cup Turf after saying originally after she was withdrawn from the ARC that she would. That's a little bit disappointing. Would love to see Love come over for that. So, I thought that was the disappointing news that came out of Europe over the last couple of days. Joe, not much to add. You summed up very good. Wonderful horse. And this is one case where, as you said, Connections have absolutely nothing to apologize for. It's very sporting for them to bring her back as a 6-year-old to try to win the 3rd ARC. Unfortunately, it didn't work out for them. May have been the ground, may not have been the ground. Who knows? It was not practical to bring her back next year at 7 or anything that anybody really expected. So, Enable, thank you for the memories and good luck in your next career.
She's everything you can want in a racehorse. She was a homebred that was brought up the right way, brought through a right program. And just, what amazed me is some of these statistics. She won 11 Group 1 or Grade 1s. She was 6 for 6 undefeated against fillies. She won 12 races in a row, including 11 graded stake races in a row. Let that sink in. She won 11 graded stake races in a row, topped off by winning the Arc of Triumph back-to-back years. She won the ARC and the Breeders' Cup Turf within 4 weeks of each other after having to make a transatlantic flight in between. And she was the first horse to do that, to win the ARC and the Breeders' Cup in the same year. 2-time Horse of the Year, 2-time Older Horse of the Year. I mean, really, if she is not the absolute mark of greatness that we all want, to aspire to, now I don't know what is, but I always loved watching her run. I wasn't, a big European racing fan. She made me a European racing fan based on all the things that I just mentioned, and just her try hard and different surfaces, different distances, boys, girls, it didn't matter. She won and defeated everyone who was in her wake, to the tune of $14 million worth of purse earnings. And she made me a convert. I'm an enabler because of her.
Good.
Good one. Not a ton to add. I was lucky enough to see her at the Breeders' Cup a couple years ago and watch her train and kind of get an up close look at her. Definitely just kind of a horse that exuded class, and it was cool to watch her. I'm pretty sure she galloped on the turf course. was just cool to watch her kind of gallop around there. And, you know, great mover, everything you'd expect. So certainly well-deserved retirement, certainly earned it. Hopefully, you know, we'll see how she does in her next career.
Yeah, she's going to be bred to Kingman, who's a pretty good young sire overseas. I want to piggyback off what John said, that, yeah, someone who's more of a casual fan of European racing, she was appointment viewing every time she ran. You know, I would set the alarm and make sure to be watching, because she was just that exciting and just that classy and just that fun to watch. I want to give a hat tip to Emma Berry, who had a really good retrospective on Enable's career called Enable One for the Ages the other day in the TDN. So I suggest you read that. Great coverage overall from the TDN Euro team on her retirement. So yeah, there's not too many retirements that I think would deserve their own segment on a show like this, especially not European retirements. But she was one of a kind, and was 15 out of 19 in her career, and just an absolute class act. So yeah, hats off to everybody who did the job with her this whole time, because it was an incredible run. Joining a West Point Thoroughbreds partnership can vault you into the world of instant camaraderie among people surrounding high-class horses and stakes action for a fraction of the cost of trying to do it on your own. Learn more at westpointtb.com. We'll be right back after this message from West Point Thoroughbreds. So we had some fireworks on last week's Green Group Guest of the Week with Kenny McPeek, when we asked him the story of how Robbie Alvarado got aboard Swiss Skydiver in the Preakness. And in addition to giving credit to Robbie, he had a little bit to say about Tyler Gaffalione and his agent. I wonder if we can pipe in that audio from last time. But basically the idea was that Tyler had given Kenny a 2-race commitment, the Oaks, and then the second race, and then backed out of that commitment to ride for Chad Brown at Keeneland. Now, we had a response from Matt Musicar, who's Tyler's agent in the TDN the other day with Bill, and he told it a little bit differently. He said, I'm going to read a quote here. Matt says, maybe 2 days after the Kentucky Oaks, Kenny called me and said he didn't know what the second race was going to be, that it was going to be between the Spinster, the Preakness, and the QE2. I told him that I needed to know as soon as possible. We talked again Saturday, 9 days before the draw for the Preakness, and he told me she was going in the Spinster. So after he was told that the horse was going to run the Spinster, he started lining up mounts for Gaffalione at Keeneland. He turned down all the mounts on the Preakness card, and instead decided to run a Keeneland, including newspaper of record in the Shadwell Turf, or in the First Lady, and then analyzed it. It was the favorite in the Shadwell Turf Mile. And then Musicar said that McPeek didn't tell him he was going to run the Preakness until the Saturday before the race, by which time he'd already made commitments to Chad Brown, Brendan Walsh, and others. And Musicar said he called Kenny and said, I called him and said, what are you doing? He said, Matt, we're running in the Preakness, handle it. And then he hung up the phone. So he was saying, like, what did he expect us to do? He waited until the last moment to decide he was going to run in the Preakness. Obviously a sticky situation, but I love the drama here. I love the back and forth. We need a little bit more of this spiciness in racing. Everyone's a little bit too careful with what they say, and it's good for the show. So I know John has more to say about it as well, but I'm going to toss it to Bill first, since he did the story.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. I mean, people do love controversy, don't they? I mean, I think our number of hits just exploded with this. It was, matter of fact, even the Los Angeles Times puts out a horse racing newsletter. They picked up on it, which was kind of flattering, as a matter of fact. I mean, I don't have a dog in this fight. I like everybody involved. I like Ken McPeek. I like Matt Musicar. It's a he said thing. Who knows where the truth is with most of these things? Probably lies somewhere in between. And I also wonder how much of this was just a misunderstanding. But yeah, it was kind of fun, I guess, is the way to put it, to see that, kind of a mudslinging match going on in the world of horse racing, where normally people are pretty buttoned up about that. But ever since we said last night when we were changing emails that this subject would be part of the show, John Green has just been chomping at the bit. So I yield the floor to him.
And what I'm chomping at the bit to talk about has really less to do with the players that are involved and more to do with the system that is implemented. you have to understand that when you hire a jockey, that is the ultimate short-term independent contractor agreement that you have. They literally are working for you for 20 minutes. So much so that by the time they get off your horse in a race, they are already taking off your silks and running to a locker room to put on a new person's silks. So you have to understand that these guys are independent contractors. They and their agents are looking for the best mounts possible, the best opportunity to score and make money, and the best opportunity for them to, continue to vault forward their careers. So understand that it's the ultimate part-time gig. I mean, basically, it's almost paramount to you hiring an escort to go to your cousin's wedding. If you have a great time at the wedding, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be able to take that escort out again to your office Christmas party. You have them for that small period of time, and then you move on to the next one. People have shouted from the rooftops and written on Twitter, why don't they have, written contracts, and how can this be? It's basically a one race agreement that you have, and you're going to get bumped. And as many wins as we've had, and thankfully we've had some great wins over the years, we've been spun 3 times as many victories as we've ever had, because that's the jockey agent's job, is to do it. And whether you like Mike Musicar or other jockey agents, they don't really care, because their main primary goal is to get them on the best horse possible. There's an old saying that I used to listen to, from long ago, that says opportunity trumps loyalty when it comes to part-timers. And that's unfortunately the truth. So #OTL, opportunity trumps loyalty. And in this case, when, Matt Musicar was getting some inconsistent reports from Kenny McPeek, he opted to take his jockey and go to Keeneland and ride a number of races there. Now, unfortunately, he didn't win any races there, but he probably salvaged a relationship with the trainers that were at Keeneland that day, and he'll be able to ride for them again, provided that Tyler continues with his, 19% win percentage and 50% of the money percentage. So the bottom line for me is that the jockeys are, independent contractors. You can't expect them to sign anything or to agree to anything other than the race that is right in front of them, because anything more than that is really is being silly.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add. It does just seem like a misunderstanding on both sides. Like, I don't know if anyone's really guilty of anything. It was just a circumstantial thing. But it is kind of heartening to see big horses and big connections get spun, because like John kind of mentioned, I mean, we get spun all the time, and sometimes we'll make our first choice because we don't want to go with someone who we know will end up spinning us at the draw. So it's a tricky situation. I don't know that there's a better way to do it. I think this will probably die down. I think it's run its course.
That was the opposite of what I expected John to say. I thought he was going to torch jockey agents and go scorched earth on jockeys and jockey agents, but I guess he has to maintain those relationships. Just for the people that might not know, what is the definition of spinning?
So spinning is basically when you are given, when you as the trainer reach out to a jockey agent and say, I have this horse in the 5th race on this day, can you ride for me? And they give you a verbal commitment. Either they say, yes, definitively, yes, maybe, or absolutely not, I would never ride your horse. And I've heard all 3. And if they say yes, then you would expect that at the entries, when you enter your horse, that you would be able to name Joe Smith as your rider. What happens is when the jockey agent finds out the day before a race that a better horse is coming in and they have the opportunity to ride that better horse, they very ungracefully, text or call your trainer and say, hey, I'm getting a better commitment. So I'm going to not ride your horse anymore. Now you have 2 choices at that point. You can actually go to the stewards and say, I had a verbal agreement with this jockey to ride my horse, and force them to ride your horse, which usually doesn't turn out well. Or you can say, okay, fine, I understand that that's the nature of the beast. I'm going to go ahead and release you from your verbal agreement. There's no legal term in this. It's just basically they found a better opportunity. Again, it's like you have a prom date, and all of a sudden the captain of the football team comes in and asks your date, to go to the prom. She's going to spin you. You're kind of SOL at that point.
And like, what power do the stewards have to do anything about it? Any?
No, I mean, basically they can force the rider, if there is a commitment, they can force the rider to ride the horse, but it's not going to do you any good. And I'll give you a quick example, Joe. Years ago, we had a horse that won an allowance race, pretty impressive. I think won by like 15 lengths, and we were bringing the horse on Belmont Day to run in a 1.5 mile long starter allowance, and one of the riders, who was actually now a Hall of Fame rider, was supposed to ride us, and came to the jockey agent came to us 2 days beforehand and said, "Hey, there's another horse that's coming in that we want to ride." And we said, "No, you gave us this commitment. We're going to hold you to that commitment." And I remember driving home the Friday before Belmont Day and listening to Mike and Mike on the Mad Dog, and Mike Francesca was interviewing that jockey, and he asked the jockey flat out, "Hey, the Belmont's a really tough, track to navigate, and it's a 1.5 mile race. How do you know like what to do while you're riding the 1.5 miles? Like, how do you know when to move and when not to move?" And the jockey said on national radio, "Well, the good news is that I have a test run in this starter allowance 2 races beforehand. That's also a 1.5 miles. So I'll have a pretty good idea of how that racetrack is going to feel." And I called our trainer at that point and said, "Why are we riding him?" Because he just announced to all of the listeners that basically we're the guinea pig. And sure enough, we broke on top. We went to the back. We went back up to the front. We went left. We went right. And we ended up in 6th place because we made him ride our horse.
You should have called up like, "Hey, Mike, this is John. First time, long time."
Yeah, exactly. I like a horse named Harvey's little Goil.
John, you got to name the jockey. There's no reason to keep this a secret.
It was a Hall of Fame rider. That's all I'll say.
All right.
That's all I'll say. You can look it up though if you want. If you're a good reporter, you can look up and see when we ran a horse in a starter allowance 1.5 miles the same day as the Belmont. It was in the late 80s.
That'll be easy to find with all the data that racing provides. Anyway, go ahead, Brian.
Oh no, I just was going to comment. You said that John was nice to jockeys. He did compare them to escorts, so there's that.
Maybe that's just where John's head goes.
Listen,
10 o'clock in the morning.
I was trying to think this morning. I was trying to think of what would be the best analogy for a short-term relationship, and I was going to go with speed dating. And finally, it is what it is. I mean, people are in for the activity for the short money, and then they move on to somebody else. That's whether it's an escort or whether it's a jockey. It's 6 of 1 as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, we don't shame sex work here at the TDN Writers Room. We're very progressive and sex positive. We don't want to do that.
Nope. Opportunity trumps loyalty. That was the walk away. Opportunity trumps loyalty. I heard that from many, many people in years gone by.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they need relationships with dozens, sometimes hundreds of different people. So there's going to be conflicts of interest all the time. So yeah, tough situation unless you get like written commitments, signed, dated, all that stuff. It's going to be hard.
Yep, no, absolutely. And Brian brings up a very good point. There are a lot of times where we'll sit there and say, who would be the best rider for this horse? Who would fit that horse best? And you have to go down and cross off a couple of people because they already have very strong relationships with bigger outfits. They have a stronger relationship with probably the favorite in the race. So it's not necessarily who's best for your horse. It's who's best for your personal situation. That usually begets who you ride.
Right. And the toughest thing is, especially, I think it happens a lot in New York. It happens really in the more competitive races. You think you have a commitment from one guy, you get spun, and then you're looking for the 12th best jockey in the room and, trying to figure out, is this bug boy better than this one and that kind of thing. So you don't want to, sometimes if you reach for the top jockey and you get spun, you end up with, something you really don't want. So sometimes it's better to kind of aim for the middle.
So earlier this week, there was some news that Bill reported on about Gulfstream Park for the upcoming championship meet, which I believe starts at the end of November, early December. Is going to allow fans at 50% capacity at the racetrack. I think this is probably the biggest capacity of fans we've had in racing. I know Monmouth allowed some. There have been a couple other tracks that have had a smattering of fans, but I think this is the biggest contingent of fans we're going to see. I mean, so you guys know my feelings about this situation. I've at length ranted about it, but it just seems like that's the way things are going, regardless of how many cases or how many deaths or where we are with the pandemic. It just seems like more and more fans are going to be showing up at these stadiums. Incidentally, I was watching the Bills-Titans game last night, and they had some fans mixed in with like cardboard cutouts, and I thought that looked the best. out of all the things I've seen, because all the cardboard cutouts look stupid. Some fans only look stupid, but if you mix them in with cardboard cutouts, it might be a little creepy, but I think it looks the best on television. Anyway, Gulfstream is going to have 50% capacity. Florida is an interesting situation because the governor has said science be damned and has just opened everything up, taken off all the restrictions, which obviously is a ridiculous, dangerous thing to do, especially in a state with so many elderly people. It's just completely irresponsible. The Florida football coach said last week that he wanted 90,000 people in the stands in the Swamp for the game against LSU. And then lo and behold, this week, 5 of his players tested positive for coronavirus. And now this morning it's breaking that they have to stop all football activities. So I think hubris is going to be people's downfall when it comes to this. Regardless, I do think that it makes more sense for a place like Gulfstream that has a casino and the casinos are open to allow fans to come and enjoy racing outdoors, because I got to tell you, it's honestly ridiculous right now in New York. We have the Resorts World Casino open at Aqueduct, like maybe it's a reduced capacity, but we still can't have fans at Aqueduct or Belmont, that to me is ridiculous. I think you should either close everything or open everything at a smaller capacity. There's no reason that people should be sitting in a poorly ventilated casino pulling dirty slot machines, and I can't go watch a race from the 8th pole at Belmont. So that part is ridiculous. So in that way, since Gulfstream has the casino that is no doubt open and no doubt doing a lot of business, it doesn't make sense to keep fans away. But I'll toss it to Bill.
Yeah, as you said, Governor Ron DeSantis has basically said this is the wild, wild west now. Anything goes. You can do whatever you want. He was actually encouraging the Miami, Florida State, Florida, and the Miami Dolphins to open up their stadiums to as many people as they possibly wanted. And other than the football coach at Florida, everybody said, no, not the best idea in the world. So if you say 50% capacity for Gulfstream, that would mean, I would imagine, on virtually any day, they can have as many people as they want. Because, in this day and age, how many people go to Gulfstream on a Thursday? Maybe 1,500, 2,000 people, something like that. I'm just guessing, but it's probably not much more than that. So then you get into the bigger days. The 2 biggest days to meet would be the Pegasus and the Florida Derby. And Bill Badgett told me they could probably get about 6,000, 7,000 people in for those days. And he said, we may have to take a look at this and see if we can try to increase that a little bit. I mean, Gulfstream is just playing by the rules set in Florida. Matter of fact, it's within their right to say, we can have 90,000 people come to Gulfstream Park if 90,000 people want to come and cram into this place, because again, there are no longer any rules in the state of Florida whatsoever. Would I go? I don't know. I probably wouldn't personally, but it's not up to me. It's up to people if they want to go and take certain risks. But I think it will be good to see racing at such a premier place like Gulfstream not take place with these empty stands and sort of the depressingness of that. As Bill Badgett said to me, it'd be good to see people having some fun here and down on the rail and everything like that. But certainly understand why people wouldn't want to go, and I understand why people wouldn't want to go.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to add. I did see another publication publish something saying that Churchill might have fans. I haven't heard anything, but it sounds like they might have limited fans. I think there's definitely a way to do it that's safe. These tracks are huge, especially Churchill, that I think they could figure something out and get some amount of fans in. You just worry that it's not going to be well policed and not well spaced, and it just ends up being, free for all and that kind of thing. But I think if it's done the right way, we could try it.
Yeah, no, I think that's right. I think your point is right, that once you let people in the door, like it's a free for all. They're just going to do what they want. But sorry, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, going back to what you said about New York, and one of the things that is so ironic about this is that what is the capacity of Belmont Park? 80,000 people, and on a normal day you might get 700-800 people. So you would have less than, if you just open up the doors for everybody and said, just come on in. With the exception of Belmont Day, you'd probably be operating at 1% capacity. There can't be a safer place on earth than Belmont Park to hold racing. Social distancing, you could have your own section of the grandstand if you want. And so it is kind of ridiculous but everybody's trying to make this up as they go along. But, and I'm sure Naira really is, doesn't want to push the envelope too much. They have a good relationship with Governor Cuomo and whatnot. But you're certainly right about that. Not allowing fans at Aqueduct and Belmont, particularly Belmont, is really kind of silly.
Yeah, I mean, Belmont is cavernous for anybody who's never been there. I used to go there on like weekdays when I was younger, and I would literally have the entire grandstand to myself. Like there was nobody there on a weekday, and it's one of the biggest places in America. I was there when there were 120,000 people for Smarty Jones's Belmont. So I know they can fit more than 80,000. So yeah, if there's one place in New York, one venue in New York that can hold the normal capacity that they have on a day-to-day basis, it's Belmont. So it's a little bit ridiculous there, but better safe than sorry, I think is my general rule here. The Green Group Guest of the Week is sponsored by The Green Group, an accounting, tax consulting, and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry. With over 500 clients in the horse business, they have proven strategies to save you taxes. Learn more about how they can help you at www.greenco.com. Our Green Group Guest of the Week this week is the owner of a now double Grade 1 winner who was just announced this morning will be standing at Spendthrift at the end of his career. Kirk Robison, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Glad to have you. So Jackie's Warrior is the horse in question. I would say clearly the leading 2-year-old colt right now. He's won the Hopeful. He's won the Champagne. But I wanted to ask more about you to start here. I want to know your background, how you got into racing. I know you're a Texas guy now. You're originally from California. But can you tell us how you originally got into the sport?
Sure. Well, I grew up about 60 miles east of Los Angeles in an area called San Bernardino. And my dad had a small grocery store and a meat market. He liked the races. So when I was about 11 or 12 years old, he would take me to Santa Anita and then eventually to Hollywood Park in Del Mar. So from the time I was not even a teenager, I got interested in racing, and it's been in me ever since. So it's a long time ago. And but with that, being self-employed, he could leave whenever he wanted and go to the races and come back. So I'd go to the races with him. That's the way I got started.
Hey, Kirk, it's Bill Finley, and thanks for joining us. And let's get right to the news of the day. We'll be reading about it, of course, in the Thoroughbred Daily News tomorrow. But tell us about the deal with Spendthrift and a couple specific questions I would have for you. Who's going to be able to make the racing decisions going forward? We're also wondering if myracehorse.com was involved in this as well. So I know there might be some things you're not yet willing to disclose or ready to disclose, but please tell us as much as you can right now about this deal that you worked out with them.
Be glad to do it. Yeah, one of my goals was they wanted to buy a part of the horse early on after he won the special. And I said, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait till maybe he wins the Hopeful and he's worth more, and I can get a deal that's more in my, more satisfying to me. I wanted to control his racing career while he's racing, and I got that. They agreed to that. So Steve Asmussen, my trainer, and I are going to manage the horse until he's retired. And there's no racehorse.com involved. It's only me. I get all the purse money during his racing career. I've got some bonus structure in there from Spendthrift. At the end of his racing career, he goes to them and they manage the stud career. Does that help?
Very good, thanks.
So I got some front money, and then I have some incentive money. The first one was the Champagne. So he won the Champagne, and so we accrue some money through his career, and when he goes to stud, we get the money at the end. But on the front end, I got a pretty good size chunk of change, which I'm not unhappy with. So, does that make sense? So basically, if he wins the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, which would be fantastic, that's an incentive. There's some Breeders' Cup races are incentive races. If he wins a Triple Crown race, that's an incentive. So basically, it's got some built-in cash incentives if he's able to do all that. And I agreed to retire the horse at the end of his career to Spendthrift. And, they're going to be a good partner.
Kirk, it's Jonathan Green. Again, congratulations on the big weekend that you had with the colt. It's always exciting when you win a Grade 1. So I'm happy for you.
Thank you.
The statistics show that it's actually harder to buy a Grade 1 at auction than it is to breed a Grade 1 winner at auction. Yet you were able to buy Jackie's Warrior for under $100,000 at the Keeneland September sale. Can you give our audience an idea of the process of when you first saw the colt and what impressed you upon him and ultimately, had you go to $95,000 to buy him?
I take no credit for buying the horse. I did not go to the Keeneland September sale. I used to go year after year, but I delegated that to Steve Asmussen because Steve's a very good picker of yearlings. We've had a good relationship over the years. And I've always kind of used a theory that if a trainer buys a horse and he has to train the horse, there's a natural linkage there that they're going to want to make sure they don't buy a horse that's not going to be a runner. Now, believe me, Steve's bought a lot of horses for me, and they don't all turn into be good runners. That's just the nature of the business. So I think in this case, Steve had the stallion Maclean's Music as a 2-year-old when he won that race at Santa Anita, and it's been written about many times. He had 112 or 114 buyer and never raced again. My guess is that Steve saw this colt and said he looks a lot like Maclean's Music. Maybe he can run like him. And I'm a son of a gun. Here we are 1 year later, and he's just a hell of a horse. So that's the process. Steve kind of knows the comfort level I have of what I'll pay for a horse, and I buy between 6 and 10 a year, and that's what I did this year. I think I bought 8, and he bought all of them, and they'll go to Laredo to his dad's place to be broken, and then they come back to him. And Steve's good about figuring out, can they go to Keeneland? Can they go to Churchill? Do they go to Saratoga as a 2-year-old? If they're not good enough, they maybe go to Lone Star or Remington, because Steve's very good at figuring out, can they compete at the highest level as a 2-year-old, or they're not going to be quite that good. So that's really the process. I don't second guess Steve. He gives me a list of hip numbers. I look it up. I authorize the vet to go ahead and vet these horses out. Either the horse vets or he doesn't. If he doesn't vet, we don't bid. If he does vet out, we do. And then Steve kind of has a mental number that he'd like to get a horse at. And if it goes past that number, we just keep moving on.
Mr. Robinson, congratulations again. Now I know you pledged some money to New Vocation, some of the purse money for the Breeders' Cup. Can you talk about that a little bit and why you thought that was a worthwhile cause?
Well, the horses that live to be 20 and 25 years old have a heck of a lot part of their life that's not involved in racing. And if we don't recognize that and acknowledge it, we're really just fooling ourselves. I don't have the answer for it, but all these people that do take care of horses after their racing career, I think they just deserve our support, because you take a 5-year-old gelding that has no value after his racing career is over, unless you're lucky enough to lose him in a claiming race later in his career and he goes on to somebody else. You've got a horse on your hands that nobody wants. It's a huge problem. It really is. And I just thought it was the right thing to do. I had a horse named Isn't He Clever? He was by Smarty Jones. I think he was the biggest earner ever for Smarty Jones. He made $900,000, mostly in New Mexico. And I retired him, but I had nobody that would take the horse. So I sent $5,000 to, I guess, New Vocations and shipped the horse to Pennsylvania. They give the horse to an adopter to take the horse. I got just an update just yesterday on how the horse is doing, because I'm not going to take a horse that made almost $1 million and just turn him over to some guy's backyard. So that's really what it is. I don't claim to have all the answers, and I know the cost to care for a horse, even when they're not a racehorse, is not cheap. So the kind of work the New Vocations is doing is the kind of people we need in the sport. They don't get anything out of it except the satisfaction of taking care of these horses. If we're lucky enough to have if we can get a filly that can be retired and good enough to be bred, we solve the problem. But on these geldings and the horses that aren't much, it's a problem.
I wanted to ask that, we cover racing all across the country at the TDN, and we do a fair amount of coverage of the New Mexico racing as well. You and your wife, Judy, are some of the most prominent breeders there in New Mexico. I wanted to know why you decided to put down roots there.
Well, we live in El Paso, and El Paso is right on the border with New Mexico and Mexico. We don't run much in Texas, but we do run in New Mexico, which has a casino program, which jacks up the purse money. So it makes it it's actually a pretty good place to run because the casinos support the purses. So we have Sunland Park Racetrack, which you guys know who that is. They're right here, literally in El Paso. Even though it's in the state of New Mexico. And then Zia Park, which is running right now over in Hobbs, both have casinos. Casinos right now are not running because the governor shut them down. So the purse money at this moment is not as good as it has been historically. That'll get solved once COVID and some of these other issues get behind us. But we came to El Paso in the 1970s to go in the restaurant business, and I've been here ever since. So I make the money in the horse racing or the restaurant business, and I give part of it away in the racing business. So that's what happens. If you don't have any extra money to get rid of, you can't be in racing because it's a tough game. And so I think anybody that announces when they buy a yearling, they're going to go win the Derby with a horse, that all sounds good. But the truth is, it's extremely hard to get a horse that can run well and stay sound enough to take the grind. So that's why we're here.
Kirk, we noticed, and maybe this was an omission, that you weren't in any of the winner's circle pictures that we saw of Jackie's Warrior. Is that COVID-19 related? Have you been unable to see him run in person? And if so, what has it felt like to have the horse of a lifetime and perhaps not been able to be there? And will you be at Keeneland for the Breeders' Cup?
Okay, we are going to the Breeders' Cup. My whole family, my wife and I have 2 daughters, and between them they have 9 children, and I think all but one of them are going to the Breeders' Cup. As far as New York, we did not go to either Saratoga for the Hopeful or to Belmont for the Champagne because COVID, at that very minute, the governor was ready to shut down all the restaurants in New York and make it more restrictive even going to the track. My grandson, who lives in New York, went, and he's a young man in the winner's circle picture there with Toby Sheets, who's the assistant for Steve. So we have not seen the horse run live, and I wish I could, but I couldn't do it. Couldn't do it.
Kirk, one of the things that we like to do on the interview part of the process is when somebody's campaigning a top horse like you have with Jackie's Warrior, we talk about the fact that what the horse's credentials are compared to last year's winner of the respective field. I don't know if you realize this. That Jackie's Warrior ran 100 Beyer, which is phenomenal to run triple digits as a 2-year-old. But last year's winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile was Storm the Court, who ran an 87 Beyer to win that race. So already your colt numerically and is already ahead of the curve. What do you think of your chances in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile?
It's a great question. We think about it all the time. Well, he hasn't gone 2 turns yet. He hasn't run at Keeneland. That other colt that's in there, I think it's a Godolphin, right? Who already won a 2-turn race there at the distance. And so that's a huge advantage for him. But our number, if he can carry that speed around 2 turns, I mean, our colt's going to be very, very hard to beat. The numbers don't lie. And I've watched the replays a number of times, both the Hopeful and the Champagne, and he just has another gear when he came to the quarter pole. And Rosario's looking around 2 or 3 times to see where the competition is, and there's nobody coming at him. So he's just a blur out there. I think I read, my grandson just sent me the early morning line. We're 9 to 5, and that other colt's 5 to 2 in the morning line for the Breeders' Cup. So, I mean, I never dreamed I'd have a Breeders' Cup Juvenile favorite morning line, but now we got to go out and do it. But I'm extremely confident. Steve and his team, they have a terrific track record. There's no doubt about it. I mean, the kind of horses that they've gotten to the Breeders' Cup and been successful and Eclipse Award winners is pretty darn strong. And so I just have a lot of confidence they'll get the horse ready and he'll go. So, and Rosario, of course, he's one of the best around, in my opinion. And he's been on the horse now, I think 3 in a row. And there's no reason that he's not going to know how to run the horse. I mean, my guess is he's got one way of going, which is go to the front, try to get the horse to relax. And that's up to Joel to figure out how to do that. But I sure like our chances.
Yeah, and Kirk, just so you know, I mean, Joel knows his way to the winner's circle going that route. That's actually how he did it with Jaywalk for us a couple of years ago. So going to the front and keeping, and improving your position is exactly what he wants to hear. Sure.
And he's never been behind a horse. So if somebody outbroke us for a quarter mile or 3/8, I guess Joel will figure out what to do. But it's exciting. It's an exciting time. It really is.
Now, Kirk, when did you first hear from Steve that the Jackie's Warrior had talent? Just before he ever ran? I'm sure you can never really expect what he's done up to now, but did you know he was good? And then going into Saratoga, I think Steve had another horse in the race who was a shorter price. But had you heard much from him about how they were training respectively, and what were your expectations going into that race?
Yeah, good question. Well, again, my horses for Steve all go to Laredo to be broken by Keith, Steve's dad. And during the time they're there, which is 7-8 months, I talk to Keith once in a while about how are they doing, and he doesn't get too ahead of the curve on who's running well, because he doesn't do much with them as far as asking them for speed. But I told him early on, like February or March, I said, I want to win the Hopeful someday with a 2-year-old. And he actually said, this might be your colt. So I think he had a hint the horse was pretty darn good. And that was really it. And then he broke his maiden at Churchill. So he's pretty early, because a lot of horses don't get to the races that early as a 2-year-old. But he got there and won, and then went right to the special. So I don't think Steve ever predicted this horse is a rocket. He doesn't try to do that, hype up the horse, because eventually you got to run the race. So, and he's got a lot of good 2-year-olds. I mean, you look at who Steve has these days, and I know you edit some of this out, but Steve gets clients today. He didn't get them 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. He gets China Horse Club. He gets Stone Street. He gets Windstar. He gets, he's always had Ron Winchell. I mean, he's got people that bring him now really, really expensive, really, really well-bred horses, because they figured out this guy knows how to take care of a good horse. I mean, all credit to Steve. In my opinion, his game went from just a lot of horses in a lot of places to now playing at the biggest level in so many big races. And that's a credit to Steve.
Yeah, I think that's right. Sorry, go ahead, Brian.
And you'll still see him claim a $5,000 horse at Remington. He still does it all. I don't know how he does it.
I think he's the hardest guy around as far as working. I don't know how many miles he drives or air miles he gets, but it's got to be a whole lot of them. So yeah, he's a hard worker.
For sure. I had one more question I wanted to ask. I want to inject you with truth serum right now. I know you're soaking all this up. You're enjoying the ride. Have you started dreaming about the Derby with this horse?
Well, you can't not think about it, but I'll be honest. I think I'm pretty good about measuring and managing my expectations, because we all know that horses can disappoint in a lot of ways. They're physical issues, performance issues. But yeah, a little bit. His mother was a pure Cold Stone sprinter. I mean, I think Steve said her average winning distance was 5.5 furlongs. So to even get a mile or a mile and 16th could be the upper limits of where this horse goes. I don't know. I've been around the business long enough to know that most people only know one race in the country. They know the Kentucky Derby. So when you're at a cocktail party, the first question people want to know are two things. One, how many horses do you own? Because they always get impressed when you have a bunch of horses. And have you ever had a horse in the Derby? Other than that, they're out of the conversation, because they wouldn't know the Champagne from the Met Mile, but we do. Right. And we know, we respect the history. I mean, when I read that they've run the Champagne since 1867, I appreciate the fact that there's a lot of horses that were in there that are in the history books. And to win that race is just incredible. What did I read? That First Landing and Dayoutoftheoffice were the only two 2-year-olds in the last 60 years that swept all three of the graded stakes in New York in 1 year. And now our colt did it. So to put that in perspective, I appreciate every one of these races, because now he's a made stallion in the sense that a major farm wants him because of what he's done so far. But if we could be lucky enough to win a Breeders' Cup or win a Breeders' Cup Sprint later or a whatever, it'd be even more satisfying. But yeah, I only want to go to the Derby, though, I'll be honest, if I've got a horse that can run 1, 2, 3. I don't want to be 20-1 and run up the track. And heck, I read just the other day from one of you guys or somebody about last year's Breeders' Cup Juvenile. The first 5 finishers in that race have never won since. The winner and 4 right after him. So you're thinking to yourself, gosh, were they all just not quite that good? But on that day, they were pretty good. So I try to keep in perspective. You'd like him to have a 15 or a 20 race career and win multiple more grade 1s, but we'll see.
Yeah. I mean, that's a great answer and great to hear. And last year's Champagne winner didn't turn out too bad at 3 either. So
no,
maybe you can follow footsteps.
I mean, I'll be honest. I've watched those replays of the 18 and 19 Champagne to see what the fractions looked like and what the final time was. So to get 100 buyer after a 95 and the hopeful. I mean, this horse really backed it up. So anyway, couldn't be happier.
He's a monster, no doubt about it.
Some would even say, Kirk, that he ran a whopper of a race.
He did. Yeah. Well, he's really quite a nice colt. And Steve did say that he called him an old soul, S-O-U-L. He's like a 6-year-old gelding. He takes everything in. He's easy on himself. He looks around the paddock. Okay, got to go to work. And then they go back to the barn, give him a bath and feed him, let him take a nap. And then you go back to work. So he's really I think Steve would say a very smart horse, takes care of himself and doesn't get too worked up and use up all of his energy. So he's a horse of a lifetime for a guy like me. Other people may have multiple grade 1 winners. I don't. And he may be the last one I ever have. I don't know. But they're so hard. I tell my kids this, 20,000 foals every year in the United States, about 12,000, I think, are in Kentucky. So if that 12,000 is where the best horses come from, and 6,000 of those 12,000 are colts, and we've got the best colt of the generation. I mean, how much can you say about luck in this business other than that? Because a lot of people were not willing to pay 100,000 for this horse. So they stopped at 95 and Steve got the horse. Now, if this horse had gone to 150 or 200, we might not even own the horse. So I'm extremely grateful for what we have, knowing there's a lot of pieces that have to go into getting a good horse. It really is. And luck is the biggest piece of all. We all know about $500,000 horses that can't run, and they're out there all the time. And so anyway, it's a lot of luck, but a lot of credit to Steve. We got luck. He bought a filly for me 5 years ago named Vertical Oak, and for $20,000. $20,000. She won 700 on the racetrack, and then I put her in fold into Mischief, and I sold her for 700,000. Well, how do you do that except be just damn lucky? That's just what it is. So this game, in fact, I'm going to name a horse Luck is Fickle, because luck moves around. You have luck one day, next day it's your next door neighbor. So that's just where I am on this.
Well, that's what keeps us coming back.
Say what?
That's what keeps us coming back. Just hoping for that lucky break.
In fact, a trainer one time said the thing that keeps a trainer young is going out to the barn in the morning and having a good 2-year-old, because it's all about the promise of an early new horse that can really run. And then next year it's another chance to get another good horse. And I think that's it, because the most optimistic people in the world are people that buy thoroughbred yearlings. Are you kidding? Most of them are not going to be the greatest stakes horses. So when you get one, you have to say, thank my lucky stars, I got one.
And you sure got one. You definitely got one. And congratulations on all the success with him. We wish you the best of luck in the Breeders' Cup. Congrats on the deal with Spendthrift. And it's great to talk to you, Kirk. It was a really good interview.
Well, I was kidding one of your colleagues. I said, well, you've had Rapoli on here and Pletcher and Chad Brown. I said, now it's my turn. I mean, that's more luck right there. It takes a good horse. Otherwise, I wouldn't be on the podcast. So I'm glad to have the good horse. No,
we enjoy. I think I speak for everyone. I say we enjoyed your interview the best.
TDN is my first read every morning when I get up. I can't believe how good the publication is. I mean, I used to get that thing as a fax in the middle of the night, and it'd wake everybody up clicking off all those pages. So it's a I don't know what we did before TDN. And I call credit to you guys, because it's an incredible publication. It's a must read if you're in the business at any level. It's fantastic.
Can we turn that into a commercial? Can we clip that?
I can't even believe how good you guys, I mean, even the format of every race result and how you do all that is so professional that, anyway, you couldn't make it any better. And I think it's fantastic. So.
Well, thank you so much for saying that. We really appreciate it.
Really appreciate it.
John, you don't work at TDN.
I work for the pseudo. I prop you guys up and vice versa. No, but Kirk, thank you so much.
Because on slow days, you guys do a big feature. McGrath or one of your writers writes the great big long article about some subject that he wants to or whatever. So you fill in the slow days with good background material and good stories. And on big weekends, you're loaded with all the results. So anyway, congratulations to you guys. It's a great product. It really is.
Well, thank you so much for saying that, and congratulations to you. And thank you so much for joining us, Kirk. We'd love to have you back again.
Appreciate it. Anytime. Thank you, guys.
Green Group Guest of the Week is sponsored by the Green Group, an accounting, tax consulting, and advisory firm specializing in the thoroughbred industry. As this week's Green Group Guest of the Week, Kirk Robison, will receive a free 1-hour tax consultation. Learn more at greenco.com. We'll be right back after this message from the Green Group.
The Green Group is widely recognized as the top-rated tax and accounting firm specializing in the horse business. Why do the top owners, breeders, pinhookers, and trainers trust the Green Group as their tax advisors? The difference is experience. Firm founder Len Green has over 4 decades of experience owning, breeding, and racing horses. First-hand knowledge gives Green Group clients proven tax and money-saving strategies. Visit the Green Group at www.greenco.com. The Green Group, proven strategies to save you taxes.
All right, so that's going to do it for this week's edition of the TDN Writers Room presented by Keeneland. Remember, Keeneland November starts November 9th. We've got the Breeders' Cup at Keeneland November 6th and 7th, and Keeneland Fall going on right now. Remember to wager through Keeneland Select to get all those bonuses. I want to thank Bill Finley, John Green, Brian DiDonato, our Green Group Guest of the Week, Kirk Robison, our producer, Patty Wolf, and our editors, Aaliyah LaRocca and Danny Seiper. Thanks so much for watching. Wear a mask. See you next week.